to my channel. The last video I did, I was wearing this ring here. This is a Cellini Spiral Ring, and I had a few inquiries about it, so I thought for this video I would do a tutorial on how to make this. Now, Cellini Spiral is basically an even count peyote stitch, and I believe I did do a ring prior, a video, just regular flat peyote with graduated size beads. So this is how the stitch looks with just, you know, different size beads, still doing just straight peyote. And this, when you do the Cellini Spiral, it kind of goes on a curve. And depending on the types of beads you use, you can get more of a flat look like this, or I used a 3mm pearl on this one, and it kind of makes it raise a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. So you can experiment with different types of beads, but as a general rule, I like to use 11 Delicas, 2 colors of size just 11 seed beads, an 8/0, and if you're going to do a different color in an 8/0, 2 8/0s, or a 3mm bead. So if that's something you'd like to see, please hit the like button, come back, and I'll have a materials list and we'll get started. Okay, so for this ring, I'm using some navy 11 Delicas, some navy size 11 Miyukis. This is a galvanized champagne size 11 Miyuki. This is just check glass bead in like a gunmetal or a dark navy color, and then a light blue. And so for this ring, I'm going to see where I've got on the white one. I've got a white, an ivory, and a white. I'm going to do the gunmetal, navy, or I'm sorry, gunmetal, blue, and back to that. And then we go back down. So I'm using size 6-pound Fireline, size 11 beading needle. You could also use 8 or a 10. And so get a comfortable amount of thread, probably a good wingspan. Use a stop bead, come back, and we'll get started. All right, so I've threaded my needle with a comfortable amount of thread. I've got a stop bead on. It's important to have a stop bead because as you'll see, when you're sewing toward the stop bead, you pick up beads in one order. When you're sewing away from the stop bead, you pick them in a different order. So just keep that in mind. Don't let that confuse you. And I'll explain more when we get to that point. So this band I've picked up, this is 8 beads wide. You can make it 10, 12, as big as you want. And here's one I've done in just a flat graduated peyote. This, this is a big one. And this is 12 across. But so for this ring, I really kind of like it best with just 8 beads. So we're going to pick up 8 Delicas. And we're going to just start out doing regular flat peyote. So I've got 8. Bring that down to my stop bead. And we're just going to do peyote. So peyote is a very simple stitch. Pick up 1 bead, skip the first bead you're coming out of, and sew into the next. And then you got to make sure the beads sit nicely, and it's always a little awkward at first as you're working with hardly anything to hold on to. So we're coming out of this bead here. We're going to pick up another, skip the next bead, and go into the next bead. like this. So that creates the sticking out or up beads, like so. So we're coming out of this bead, gonna pick up another one, skip the next one, and then go into the following. Coming out of this bead here, pick up another Delica, skip the next bead and go into that last bead, not your stop bead. Always use a different color than your work. And so this is the first row. And so for like about 10 rows, we're just gonna do flat, same color, same bead, back and forth, because you want to get a good part of your band done before you start doing the middle part. So I will show you some more just flat peyote. And because we're using 8 beads, when we're doing this ring, we're only picking up 4 beads for each row. So I'm coming out of this bottom one, I'm gonna pick up go into that next bead. Now you just sew into all the sticking out beads. So you're skipping this bead and sewing into the sticking out bead. And if you see black on my fingers, it's because I'm using smoke colored Fireline, and for some reason that comes off on your fingers. Coming out of this bead, pick up another one. You're skipping this next bead and sewing into the next sticking out bead. Whoop, just the one. Pick up your last bead for this row and sew right into that sticking out bead. I'm going to flip it over. Coming out of the bottom here, let's pick up another Delica. Now you could try this with the band being all just regular 11/0s too. You could just have fun with it. Try different beads and see what you like. I kind of like the Delicas because they're very cylinder. And they line up really, really neatly. So we're coming out of this bead here, skipping that next bead and sewing into the next sticking out bead. Pick up another Delica, come out of this Delica, skip the next one, go into the next sticking out bead. Pick up a Delica, sew into that last sticking out bead of that row. I'm going to turn it around and do a few more rows. Then I'm going to go off and do enough so that I've got a good portion of my band done, and I'll come back and show you how to do the middle part. So we pick up another Delica, just sew into all the sticking out beads. Pick up another Delica. Keep your tension tight, but not, you know, not too tight where your beads start to buckle. Pick up another Delica. So into that last sticking out bead on this row. Gonna flip it. Peyote is a wonderful stitch to learn. I'm just starting to learn odd count peyote, which is really, it's a little bit different than even. Even just as, you know, straight sewing, but odd is there's a few extra moves when you're finishing a row. And with peyote, you can do all kinds of different patterns. It's just a really, really good stitch to learn. It's used in a lot of beading. I mean, when I do bezels, it's usually a peyote bezel. And bezeling is just sewing around like a stone or a fancy stone to make a bezel. I'm going to do one more row, then I'm going to go off and do a good portion of the band and then come back. So I'm just going into the sticking out bead. And really there's only 4 stitches in each row. That was 1. Next sticking out bead. Oh. That last one. Okay, I'm going to go off and sew till I get a good amount of length for my band, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've sewn a good amount of my band, and I'm going to start picking up the different size and different color beads. So we're going to go from the 11-ohs to the 8-ohs and then back down. So I'm coming out, I'm going toward my stop bead. I want to come out, when you start to add a new bead, you want to be sewing down here toward your stop bead. So I'm going to pick up the navy 11-oh, go into the next sticking out bead. All right, and it might be a little bit hard to see because they're both navy, but they're a different kind of shape of a bead. So when you're going toward your stop bead, you pick up the bead that you're coming out of. So I'm coming out of a Delica, I'm going to pick up another Delica. So through that next sticking out bead, pick up another Delica because I'm coming out of a Delica. Go through that next sticking out bead. Coming out of a Delica, pick up a Delica. So if you can somehow just remember, every time you're sewing toward your stop bead, you're picking up the bead. After you put on your new bead, which is the first bead there, you're going to pick up the bead that you're coming out of and sew into the next sticking out bead. All right, so we've got our next row on. And so now we're going to sew away from the stop bead. And when you sew away from the stop bead, you pick up the bead that you're going into. So I'm going into a Delica, picking up a Delica. Going into another Delica, picking up another Delica. Going into a Delica, pick up another Delica. Now I'm going into that last, this is just a regular 11-0. It's not a Delica. So I'm going to pick up the navy 11-0. So through that. Yeah, that happens sometimes. There goes my beads. Okay, so I flip my work again, and I'm going to start sewing toward the stop bead again. So I'm going to pick up my next color, which is the champagne. I'm going to sew in to the next bead, which is the size 11 navy, not a Delica this yet. So we're coming out of that navy. We're going to pick up another one and sew into the next Delica. Coming out of a Delica, pick up a Delica, sew into the next Delica. Pick up, coming out of a Delica, pick up a Delica, sew into the next Delica. So now we're going to turn our work around and we're going to be sewing away from the stop bead. So when you sew away from the stop bead, you sew into the bead, you pick up a bead that you're going into. So I'm going to pick up a Delica because I'm sewing into a Delica. I'm going into the next Delica. I'm going to pick up another Delica. I'm going into the navy Miyuki 11-0. So I'm going to pick up that. And I'm going into the champagne color bead. I'm going to pick up that color. So into that. So we're going to flip our work and pick up the next color, but I'm going to go off and fix my beads and I'll be back. All right, so I've put my beads back in order so that you can kind of follow this a little bit better. So as you can see, we're going to be sewing into the stop bead in the direction of the stop bead, and we've got 2 extra beads on from the band. So we've got an 11-0 Miyuki that is navy and 11-0 champagne. So now I'm going to graduate to the 8-0 to start our next row. I'm going to sew through that next sticking up bead. And for each row, you're only sewing into 4 beads. So if somehow you end up where you looks like you're sewing, more than that's not correct, and you'll have to kind of like take a few out and start over. So believe me, I know I've done that. So I'm coming out now. I'm coming out of the champagne color bead. I'm going to pick up that 11-0 champagne and sew into the next navy 11-0. And as you can see, we're starting to slant a little bit. Coming out of that navy, I get real close, you can see the difference. I probably should have used a different color beads for the tutorial, but I wanted to use these colors in this pattern. So I'm going to pick up, coming out of that navy 11-0, pick up a navy 11-0, sew into the navy Delica. Coming out of a Delica now, because we just sewed into it, pick up another Delica, sew into that last Delica. I'm going to turn my work over. And now when you're going away from the stop bead, you're going to pick up and go in the one you're going into. So I'm going to be going into this Delica here. I'm going to pick up a Delica. I'm going to be going into this navy 11-0. I'm going to pick up a navy 11-0. I'm going to be going into this champagne colored 11-0. I'm going to pick up a champagne colored 11-0. I'm going to be going into this 8-0. I'm going to pick up that dark navy 8-0 and sew into that last one there. I'm going to flip my work. Now we're going to take the next bead. We want to go with the light blue. Coming out of this darker 8-0. So I'm going to pick up that same bead and sew into that champagne colored 11-0. Coming out of this champagne colored bead, I'm going to pick up another of the same bead and sew into that navy 11-0. Coming out of this navy 11-0, I'm going to pick up a navy 11-0. So into that last Delica. And this is what you have. You can see it's starting to get a little bit of a bump into it. I'm going to flip it over and you're going to sew into the bead. You're going to pick up a bead that you're sewing into. So I'm picking up an 11-0 navy. I'm going into this champagne colored 11-0. Going into this darker 8-0. Going into this lighter blue 8-0. Oh. Gonna flip my work. Now we're gonna be sewing toward the stop bead again. I'm gonna pick up my last color for the bump, which is this darker 8-0. Well, it's not really, because I'm gonna have to go back down to the champagne 11-0 and then the navy 11-0 and then back down to the Delicas. So I'm sewing away. I'm sewing into the direction of the stop bead. So I'm going to pick up what I'm coming out of, which is another light blue. So into that next bead. Pick up, coming out of this darker 8-0, I'm going to pick up the same bead. So into that champagne colored 11-0. Coming out of the champagne 11-0, pick up another one. So into that navy 11-0. Now we're going to flip it. We're sewing away from the stop bead. So you're going to pick up a bead that you're going into. the champagne colored. The darker 8-0. The lighter 8-0. And we're going into this darker navy 8-0. This is what we have. I'm going to flip it. And now we're going to pick up again, because we're going down. After you reach the middle color, you got to go down. So then our next color is this champagne color. So into that next darker navy 8-0, coming out of that darker 8-0, pick up another darker 8-0, so into the lighter 8-0. Coming out of the lighter 8-0, pick up coming out of the darker, pick up that same bead and go into that last champagne colored 11-0. Now I'm going to sew into, as we're going away from the stop bead, picking up the darker 8-0, going into the lighter one, so pick up that bead, going into the darker one, going into the champagne 11-0, all right. So now we're going down to this navy 11-0. We're going to pick that up. So we're going in the direction of the stop bead. Coming out of this champagne, pick up the same bead, go into that darker 8-0. Pick up the darker 8-0 because we're coming out of it. Go into the lighter 8-0. Coming out of the lighter 8-0, going into that last darker 8-0. Going away from the stop bead, here we go, into the lighter one, pick up a lighter one. Going into the darker 8-0. Champagne color. Navy 11-0. All right, we're gonna flip it. And now we're back to the Delicas. So we're gonna pick up a Delica. So through that next sticking out navy 11-0, coming out of 11-0, pick up another one. So into the champagne 11-0. There we go. Coming out of the champagne, pick up a champagne. Go into the darker 8-0. Coming out of the darker 8-0. Go through that last lighter 8-0. All right. And as you pull your tension, you can feel it bump out a little bit. Oh, sewing away from the stop bead, I'm picking up the darker 8/0 because I'm sewing into it. Sewing into the champagne color, so I'm picking up the champagne color. Sewing into the navy 11/0, pick up a navy 11/0. Sewing into the Delica, pick up a Delica. And now we're only going to be, when we start a new bead, it's only going to be the Delicas because we're just going to make the other side of the band. So pick up Delica. And then when we get all the way down to, you just got to kind of play with it on your finger and see what fits. Or you can use a ring mandrel. I just kind of eyeball it and see what fits best. And then at the end, I'll show you how to zip it up. But we'll do a few more rows here. We're coming out of the Delica. We're going toward the stop bead. So I'm going to pick up a Delica. So into that next 11/0. Coming out of the navy 11/0, pick up another navy 11/0. So into that next champagne color. Coming out of the champagne color, pick up another champagne and go into that last dark 8/0. Going to flip it. Going into this champagne color, pick up a champagne color. Going into the navy 11/0, pick up navy 11/0. Going into now the Delica, pick up a Delica. Going into the Delica, pick up a Delica. All right. We're just back to the band color, which is the 11 navy Delica. Coming out of the navy Delica, pick up a navy Delica. Coming out of a navy Delica, pick up a navy Delica. And so into that navy 11/0. Coming out of the 11/0 navy, pick up the 11/0 navy. And so into the champagne. Coming out of the champagne, we're going to pick up what we're sewing into, and now it's just the navy 11/0 and the navy Delica. Pick up a Delica. Coming out of a Delica. All right, so now we're back to all Delicas. We're going into all the Delicas. So now we're just back to that color. So we're going to do the rest of the band for the ring and zip it up. Got my tail thread caught. Don't do that. All right, so I'm just going to go off and do the rest of the band for my ring, and then I'll be back and show you how to zip it up. Okay, so I've sewn what is a good length for my finger. Like I said, you can always get a ring mandrel if you're making it for somebody else. You can purchase those, I think, either online somewhere or at Michael's. And that way you can just kind of put the ring around that to whatever size the person is that you're trying to make it for. So this is what you have when you're done with the length. And you need to sew until when you turn it around, it fits together like a puzzle. So I don't know how, let me see if I can get real close. So the sticking out beads on one side have to be opposite on the other side. So we're going to zip it up. And I'm going to remove the stop bead now. Just pull that off. And I'm going to try and do this so you can get a good look. You're not picking up any beads now. You're just basically zipping it up like a zipper. So you're coming out of this top bead here. You're going to sew into the other side. Like that, the opposite. And then you're just going to sew into each bead. Go on one side, so you're coming out of this bead here. You're going to sew into the sticking out bead on the other side. Like that. And as you can see, it's starting to come together, like I said, like a little puzzle. And you're coming out of this bead here. You go to the other side. Just the one, like that. You just keep going from one side to the next. So my tail thread was getting caught there. So I'm coming out of this bead here. I'm going to go into the next one on the opposite side. I'm going to go across to the other side to that sticking out bead. And as you get further along, you can kind of move it onto your finger to make it more comfortable. Coming out of this, I'm going to just sew on, no other beads. Just sew on the other side, that sticking up bead. I'm going to go back to the other side. And then back to that other side. And now you have zipped up your ring. So I'm going to sew down to close that loop. And I'm going to have to go in and sew in my tail thread. But so here it is. Here's the ring zipped up, and I'm going to show you how to sew in your threads on peyote. It's really simple. You don't tie any knots in peyote. You just go down beads and then switch directions. So I'm coming out of this top bead. I'm going to sew down a few more beads. And then I'm just going to kind of go in the opposite direction, a few beads up. And then I'm going to go back again the other way, just make sure that everything is sewn in nice. Then I'm going to just clip that off and do the same thing to the other side. Sew in my tail thread, and then we'll be back and we'll look at the ring. Okay, so here's the finished ring. I really am happy with the colors. I like the colors. So this is Cellini Spiral. I hope you enjoyed learning it. And, you know, once you do learn it, you could even go on to make bracelets. I've seen bracelets made where you'd make that little bump and then you sew a few normal Delicas rows and then have the bump come out again. In fact, I might do a tutorial on that. So if you enjoyed this video, I hope you hit the like button, hit that bell, ring that bell, and you'll be notified of any time I upload a new video. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.